Supernatural. Episode 3. Punishment. She froze in shock, looking at him right in the eyes, hoping he was joking when he said strip. He looked down back at her impatiently. She jumped and gasped in horror at hearing him growling. Now! She lost control as her body started shaking uncontrollably. After what appeared to be a mere second later, he waved his finger at the crowd, and 6 or 8 of them moved instantly towards her. She couldn't tell how many for sure, but she let them forcefully manhandle her, with no resistance at all whatsoever. Not that she could resist anyway, even if she wanted to. She could barely stand, considering how nervous she was. She was more scared than she knew was possible, but it was this sweet fear that makes you jump right into whatever is scaring you and give it a big, juicy kiss on the cheek. Or, well, elsewhere. The volunteers got on with their mission. They tied her hands together and hugged them on a pulley above her head, so her toes were barely touching the ground. And they tied her legs spread apart to a couple of hooks anchored to the ground. Then they tore her clothes off, stripping her completely naked. He said, "You continue to show disobedience, though you claim otherwise. Therefore, we must discipline you, so you know how to properly behave before us." Then he nodded, and a gag was placed in her mouth, filling it up, and another on her lips, sealing them shut. Her thoughts were racing 1,000,000 miles per minute. What will happen to her? What they had planned for her? But again, a voice inside her head was assuring her that whatever it was, it hopefully would not cause her any severe harm or damage, which she found somewhat comforting. But she was still petrified, especially when he said, "This time we will not be kind enough as to blindfold you. You will witness a minor taste of our wrath." He stood up and slid his cape off onto the floor, then stretched his arm out, opening his palm, and a big long whip was placed in it. As soon as she saw the whip, her eyes widened and she shook her head as if to say no, repeatedly. He interrupted her panic fit, saying, "Simple. Should you have any objections, you know exactly what to do." She froze motionless as she realized exactly what he meant, which was that she could get herself out of the situation if she wanted to. But that was the last thing she wanted, so her only other option was submitting to the plan that was set out for her. After observing her being motionless for a few seconds, well, apart from all the shaking, he chuckled arrogantly, sarcastically, and somewhat terrifyingly. He approached her slowly but confidently. She always thought he had a very intimidating aura, which she found very hot. But she scolded herself for thinking that, considering the situation she was in. She felt oversized butterflies running a marathon in her stomach as he got closer and closer. She was so confused about her emotions, whether she was feeling all punished as planned for her, or rather enjoying it all. He stood at a distance behind her, in silence. Then she heard drumming, this time more aggressive, loud, and intense. Then the crowds joined in chanting. Then he struck her. It landed diagonally across her back, her bottom, and upper thighs, while it thinner end curved around, striking her between the legs, on her tummy and breasts. She gave out the loudest muffled scream possible. Before she was done screaming, he struck again and again. He was fast, consistent, and rough. With each strike, the drumming and chanting seemed to get louder and faster. She certainly felt punished. So much more punished than she could comprehend. She was literally hanging by her restraints, as she could no longer support her own weight with her tiptoes. Not after being whipped for what felt like a whole day and a whole night. She was nearly passing out when he pulled her hair, lifting her head up so he can see her face, and she could see his. To her surprise, it was the girl this time. She was the one pulling her head up by her hair. She looked around briefly, looking for him, wondering where he went, but the girl said to her, "We know what you are looking for, but we're right here, so eyes on us." Then she said, "You did good. However, that was the first stage of your punishment. Now we hand you to the crowd, and once they're done with you, we will see to the rest of your sentence." She thought to herself that being punished by the couple was one thing she wasn't objecting to, but being punished by a whole crowd was too harsh and cruel to even imagine. What on earth could it be? She didn't have to wait long, as a few stepped forward, cut her loose, and ungagged her. This time, and for the first time, she managed to see some of the faces of those whom approached her. It was nothing like she could ever imagine, even in her wildest dreams. It was a mix of the girl and the man's faces. There was no obvious clue if they were male or female. They all had the same faces. Same mannerisms, though somewhat less defined, or rather more discreet than those of the couple. Apart from not looking any younger, they seemed almost like daughters and, well, or sons of the couple. They all had long white hair, blood red horns, and eyes that matched their horns in color. They took off their capes at once. She noticed they all had the same body marks that she saw on the couple that night in the mansion's bed, with the addition of long, thin, dark tails, which she didn't see on the couple. Not that she ever saw them naked from behind. They appeared so beautiful in a very terrifying way. She was very taken and intrigued by the sights before her. They perfectly resembled the body of the couple, but were smaller in size or stature. As she was so drifted in thoughts, the unexpected happened right before her very eyes. She let out the loudest, most deafening shriek of horror as she silently watched what happened next. To be continued. Cleopatra.